Hello, everybody. Good morning. Today we are going to be joined by Jennifer Velez, who is a journalist based out of Los Angeles, who has written for Grammy U and many other journals. Would like to have you all join us for this interview this morning. We will be having her in just a moment. Hi, Jen. I see you. Let me go ahead and request you.
Hey,
Hey, Jen. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I love your background.
Oh, thank you.
Is that a background in your home?
It's like a tapestry that I got from Urban Outfitters. And
Oh,
it's
really?
yeah, it's come in so clutch, now that we're doing so much stuff online.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, yeah, I'm gonna use it.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Thank you.
Um, how's your morning going so far?
Good. I'm just starting it. It's 8 a.m. in LA. The sun is out, so that's awesome. It's been kind of cloudy, and I'm just drinking my coffee. I have it like right here.
Nice. I have yet to get my coffee. My coffee usually is around 12 o'clock.
Okay. Midday, I feel that.
Well, thank you for joining us today. So I introduced you as a journalist for mostly Grammy U, correct? You write mostly for Grammy U?
For Grammy.com.
Grammy.com. Okay.
Yes.
Well, I found one of my social media managers actually found your journalism and sent it my way because she was just so surprised about how well it aligned with our goals. And she was like, I think that you would be a perfect fit for someone to come on because we have a ton of journalists who follow us. So wanted to ask you a couple questions in regards to your career, if that's okay.
Yeah, let's do it.
And potentially get some advice from you for our people who follow us, if that's all right with you.
Yeah, totally.
Cool. So how did you get started in your career, first of all?
So it's actually super long and complicated. In college, I always knew I wanted to do something in media. I've had a love for music since I was a child. Being Mexican American, growing up in the US, we had rap, hip hop, R&B, and then going to Mexico, there was pop and so many other more genres. So I've always grown up listening to different kinds of music. In college, I went to UC San Diego, which is a research school. And when I decided to go there, I didn't understand what a research school was, right? But I went anyway. I majored in communication and ethnic studies, which were two really awesome majors. But I wanted to do something more hands-on. And I decided to go abroad, and I decided to go abroad to Spain, and they had a journalism class there at the university. So I decided to take it. And this was during Spain was having a social movement. A lot of young people were involved with, their economy was really bad. So it was an awesome time to learn about how people were telling stories of what was going on. So I come back to San Diego, and I join a student-run newspaper as a co-editor in chief. And that's when I decided I want to be a journalist. So I knew I was going to go back to LA, but I had no networks at all. And UC San Diego, being a research school, there were not many journalists coming out of there. So
Mm-hmm.
I ended up going to USC, and I spent a whole year there. I was enrolled in a year-long program, and I wrote about music. I ended up writing my thesis on ska music. There's a huge scene locally in LA, and that was really awesome. And it was something that I definitely wanted to do when I graduated. But at the time, and it's kind of still the same, staff jobs for writing about music they weren't that many, and it didn't seem very kind of something attainable. So I was like, I'm gonna make it work, but let me focus on hard news, because everyone needs to know the news, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I thought, like, let me focus on that. So I ended up taking a radio class. And before graduating, I applied to an NPR internship, and I ended up getting it. And that was really cool. I did podcasting there. And that kind of started a series of jobs that were hard news. I always managed to incorporate music. For example, I started to freelance. Well, I had a day job. I started freelance for Remezcla, which is a Latin website that covers music of all over the world. I started writing for the calendar there, and that's how I began writing about music for them. But I was still, you know, at my desk writing about politics and immigration, and I ended up in the Bay. I know you're from the Bay.
Yeah.
I ended up in the Bay. I ended up in San Francisco, being a digital fellow for Mother Jones, which is a magazine up there. And it was during the time that Trump, you know, was elected, and I was like, this, you know, this is very important work, but this is not where I want to be, right?
Yeah.
So I started planning ways to come back to LA to finally dedicate my time to write about music. I was like, I think I was like 25 or 26, something, you know, around that age. And I was like, I have to start focusing on what I actually want to do. Like, I can't, you know, there was some sort of hesitation because I was like, I'm not going to survive like on freelance. Where am I going to find a job? Like, all of them are in New York. So I was like, forget that mentality. I'm going to go back to LA and I'm going to find a way to write about music. So I actually began writing for a local website called LA Taco. And they do food, they do news, but they also do like events. So I began writing about music for them, and then continued looking for options because that was freelance. And then I had a friend who at the time was working for the Recording Academy, and we connected, and she was like, we have this temporary opening for staff writer for the website. Do you want to come and try to see if you're a fit for Grammy.com? And I was like, yeah. So that was in 2018. And since then, I've been writing for the website. So that's basically it. There was a lot of freelancing, wrote about culture and music. Before I got to Grammy.com, I had already had bylines in like Latino USA, in Wonderland magazine, in London, and stuff like that. So even though the journey was a little bit, you know, it definitely wasn't straight, I've managed to get to a place where I'm able to write about music full time.
And you have some really cool articles. You have articles that are based on Afro-Latinx and that community. You have, I think the last piece you wrote was a piece on, what is it? How Girls Make Beats?
Yeah.
Is that the organization?
Yes, Girls Make Beats.
Yeah. And you have such amazing ways of intertwining your ethnic studies major and what you studied in college with the work that you do in the music industry. So how did you figure out how to intertwine those? Was it just because you were very passionate about that space?
That's such an awesome question, because I really feel like ethnic studies, what I learned from ethnic studies is helping me kind of navigate how to have certain conversations regarding the music industry and stuff. So yeah, I come from an underserved background. I'm from South Central Los Angeles, for anyone who's familiar with it. And in high school, I started to notice a certain inequity. You know, I went to school on the west side of LA. For anyone familiar with the west side, Santa Monica, Venice now, communities that seem to be a little bit more invested in, and housing prices are way more up. So I went to high school on the west side, and I began through social clubs just learning about inequity in certain communities and communities of color and poor communities. So I knew whatever I did in communications or media that I wanted to have that lens, because it is wild to me how we have such a diverse country, you know, based on race, ethnicity, sexuality, gender, and so on. But there's still certain faces that we don't see on stage, on camera. So yeah, naturally, when I began writing about music, that was something that I wanted to always bring to the table. Like, what are artists of color going through? What are our artists who haven't had the same resources as other artists? Like, what are they going through? What are communities? There's a lot of things going on at the major level, but there's also a lot of things happening in the community level. So I very much love giving a platform to voices who usually don't get the platform, because it's very important. And sometimes things are happening, but we just don't have the camera on it, or we just don't have the article covering it. So definitely, since I graduated from college, I knew I wanted to have the ethnic studies lens to anything I did.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel that you're at a point in your career where you really get to choose the important topics and just write about whatever you'd like?
I think for the most part, yeah. I think because I tend to be one of the only writers of color, the only Latina, you naturally bring that lens to the table, and I think a lot of people are listening to these kinds of stories. So I juggle a lot of things, but definitely I've had gotten the opportunity many times to focus on the communities of color and underserved communities.
That's awesome. With the music that you write about, do you find that you're typically focusing on the Afro Latinx community, or do you also find that you have other interests?
I love writing about Latin music because, like I said, since I was young, I've been open to it, and I've been able to go to Mexico and see kind of like the different trends there and the different artists. So that's very much part of me as a bicultural writer. But I really love, I grew up with a lot of rock. Middle school was like the time where the Strokes, I love the Strokes,
Mm-hmm.
and you Queens of Stone Age and Nirvana. So I also love writing about rock and hip hop too, because I grew up with like gangster rap, and specifically hip hop, I feel like every genre is special, but I think hip hop, the history of it, I'm super interested in that, and how it came about and how people use it to still tell their stories. So I try to be open to a lot of different things. I think it's cool as a writer to have a specific topic you focus on, but also exploring. I think it could, for some writers of color, like it could be a challenge to, focus on something like, for me, Latin music, and then be pigeonholed like, oh, you only do Latin. But it's like, no, like I grew up with so many other genres, and I know that I can write, equally as well on those topics. So with Afro Latinx, as I'm covering Latin music, I'm trying to figure out what voices aren't, getting the light, getting highlighted. So that's how that started. It was interesting when I began to learn about the history, even in Mexico, like, how intertwined Black and Mexican and Black and Latinx is like throughout the world. So I definitely felt like that was important to put out there.
Mm-hmm. How do you feel the music industry is changing based off of what's happening with COVID and the Black Lives Matter movement and colorism becoming something that's more prominent in the scene?
I think it definitely, for a lot of things, it's like taking it day by day. With COVID, live music, I think we're all waiting to see when we'll be able to go back to venues and hear music live and be able to feel an artist in front of us and have them express their work. Um, I'm really hoping that we are, when it's all clear, that we're able to do that, because I feel like that's such a special element to music. And there's been a lot of pivoting to live streaming, which is so awesome. I very much have enjoyed seeing artists be resilient and bring their music to their fan base and finding ways to monetize or to use that to donate. But the human to human contact is something that I feel when it comes to music is it's unreplaceable. So I'm hoping we can get back to that at a certain point, but definitely a lot of pivot to digital, which isn't new, you know? I mean, YouTube has been a space where a lot of people have been finding new music, you know, Latin music specifically has really flourished on that. We have a lot of live streaming stuff. So I'm definitely interested to see how, you know, if people are going to continue the doing digital stuff, if we do get to open up again. I'm really curious about how people are going to use the digital space, because you definitely see artists doing really low key live streams, and then some like production that is for others, production that is like on the like really awesome, and you kind of feel like it's a concert, you know, but
Mm-hmm.
they have no audience. In terms of the race relations, these are conversations that have been happening for a very, very long time. Now that more people are listening after George Floyd, I hope that people at the top really get to not just listen, but make change for artists of color, for Black artists, because you know, when you talk about systemic racism, they also have a lot of other things that play against them for Black women, for Latinas, for Asian women, for women of color. There's also the gender card, and there's been a lot of going on in terms of gender and stuff. So I'm optimistic. In my Afro Latinx peace story, you know, one of the professors from UC San Diego I spoke to made me feel very optimistic about it. He was like, pop culture is the way a lot of us learn. So I find it very awesome that artists are definitely using their platform to bring more attention to their experiences as Black artists, and for other artists to be allies or accomplices in bringing attention to that, because it's been going on for far too long, a lot of this inequity.
Mm-hmm. And now that you are in a space where you have access to specific artists, how do you reach out to them? So if I were a journalist or an aspiring journalist, how would I go about reaching out to some of these big names that I'm really interested in?
So some of it is networking, and obviously getting in contact with PR, developing relationships with publicists. Sometimes you're able to find their publicist on the website, on the label website. So that's a way to outreach. Nowadays with social media, it's like sliding into the DMs can be a way, you
Mm-hmm.
know, like when you want to get an interview with an artist, you do what you can. So if you don't have the networking and you don't know other journalists who might have their PR or whatever, and their PR isn't in their PR info isn't on the label website, then some people are going to go to social media to try to get that interview.
Mm-hmm. Who is your favorite artist that you've interviewed so far?
Oh my God. Um, I got to interview Nipsey Hussle before he passed, which was
Wow.
amazing because we're from the same community. So it's not every day that I get to talk to someone that knows where I come from and knows the community. And it's amazing to see someone from my community get to the level where he got. So that was very cool. He was very down to earth, very chill. So that definitely, for that reason, it was awesome. That's been one of my favorite so far.
Was there anything specific that you remember from his interview that he said that stuck with you?
He talks about how fathership changed him, and that was very cool. He also spoke to me. I brought up Crenshaw, the area he's from, and he spoke to me about wanting to do stuff with in the food industry to kind of bring more food that's healthier. There's in communities like mine where I grew up, sometimes you only have fast food, and that doesn't bring many options. So
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was really awesome, and he was very much about his community in more than one way.
That's awesome. How do you see your career progressing? Do you see yourself continuing to do journalism for the rest of your life? Do you have goals to push more of your ethnic studies experience into the light of the music industry? What do you think?
Yeah, I would love to tell stories for the rest of my life. I love doing that. I feel like I love connecting with people. I love the world is so big, and I think the internet helps us connect to one another. And I'd like to think I help connect people through the stories that I get to do. For example, Girls Make Beats, who's doing awesome work and being able to tell their stories. So, and also be able to, tell their story as a whole. Again, putting in ethnic studies in there and being able to talk about how they not only face struggles in the industry as women, but as women of color. Um, but that's a great question. I think one of the reasons I've been able to stay in the industry and in journalism as long as I have is because I've been very flexible and versatile with my skills. Like I mentioned, I picked up podcasting, radio, and then I went to a magazine, and now I'm doing digital stuff, and I've started to host panels and stuff. So I think I'm gonna go to wherever feels good. I'm hoping it's still telling stories um, in any way, even if it's not journalism, to still be able
Hmm.
to bring light to different voices.
Can you talk about the panels that you host?
Yeah, so earlier this year, it feels like so long ago,
Yep.
but for Grammy Week, for Grammy.com, I and one of my colleagues, Laura Rodriguez, who does social, were able to do a panel on the state of Latinx music, and we were able to interview Tiny, who's an amazing producer doing a lot of stuff in Latin music and in other genres. Like he has a song out with Dua Lipa now and J Balvin. Um, so yeah, it was cool. We had other professionals and basically just gathered to talk about where the genre is going. Um, for Pride Week last year, I was able to interview LGBTQ artists for the Recording Academy and stuff. So um, yeah, those are some of the panels I've been able to do.
That's awesome. You have such a cool background. And you come from, you said Crenshaw, is that right?
South Central.
South
Yeah,
Central,
Crenshaw's in
which
South Central.
which I know is a very underserved community. So coming from that space, do you feel that you would like to do any community work back in that area eventually?
Yeah, I think it would be awesome to have more writers come from South Central. I know there's a lot out there, but really able to um, nurture those writers. I've been able to do some community, some volunteering with 826 LA, which is a writing based nonprofit, um, and helping students with their college essays. And a few years ago, with that same org, I was able to lead journalism workshops. So definitely, anytime I can, I love to give back to the community.
Hmm. Now we have just a few minutes left. If there were three pieces of advice that you could give to an aspiring journalist that is in the music industry or the entertainment industry, what are the three main pieces of advice that you would give them?
I would say um, one is be persistent. Um, if you really want to do music journalism, I believe that you can wholeheartedly. I feel like it's possible. Um, it is something that may not seem attainable, but I think once you start networking, once you start blogging, like you may not do Rolling Stone off the bat, but finding local websites or blogs, like that's a start. So continuing there and building your work. Great writing will always, great perspective will always shine no matter what publication. So definitely not getting too worried about publications if you're starting, just, you know, just write. I think another thing is be open. Music journalism is changing. Journalism as a whole is changing. There are layoffs going on. A lot of people have pivoted to freelance, but be open to finding a way to write. Be open if it's having a full-time job and then writing on the side, or a lot of nonprofits now also need writing and storytelling. Tech, you know, music, tech stuff. People always need others to tell stories in a way that is compelling and thoughtful. And I think my last piece of advice would be put yourself out there. I think it's important you don't grow when you're comfortable. So definitely take risks in yourself, and be patient. Maybe it's not going to happen overnight, but if you do little things, if you start getting yourself on the road to writing and putting stuff out there, then I believe in manifesting.
You make a really good point. And I actually have one other question for you based off of some of the advice that you gave. There are a ton of journalists out there that are struggling with finding those paid roles and trying to get their name out there. And a lot of people find that instead of applying for these jobs, they need to write for blogs and write for free. Do you think that that's what journalists should be doing if they aren't working for a paid publication yet?
I think that's a great question, and it's a complex question. I feel writers should get paid for their work. It's your perspective. It's you landing that interview with a specific artist. It's you taking the time. In an ideal world, you should get paid. I'm no one to, people have different circumstances. Sometimes people are willing to write that one article for free to get on that publication and then use that as a link to then show editors, this is what I've done. So I think that's a very personal question for everyone to really think about if they can afford to not get paid and they see it as something strategic. I'm not going to judge a person for that, but at the end of the day, people should get paid for their work. I believe 100% people should get paid for their work and get paid what they're worth. So it's not just getting paid, but it's getting paid what you're worth.
I love that point, because in the music industry, especially, artists in many spaces don't often get paid for what they're doing. And especially when you're working with BIPOC, people are undervalued. So it's important for people to understand that. So I am so grateful to have you on, Jen. You made some amazing points, and your work, I am serious. When I read your work, I was just blown away by the pieces that you write about, because you don't see it all the time. You don't see the Afro-Latinx community represented. You don't hear people talking about underserved communities all the time. So it's amazing to hear and see what you're doing. We had one question from Coates Raymond saying, do you ever offer your writing services to artists?
Do I ever offer my writing services to artists, like writing a bio or something?
I'm thinking that they are probably talking, Raymond might be able to answer that a little bit better if he's still on, but I'm thinking he's probably talking about doing a little bit of copywriting, so maybe writing a biography or also doing some PR for artists.
Yeah, we can get in touch. Definitely. I'm at Jenn Velez on Twitter. I have my email in my profile. So if there's ever time, I'd love to. Yeah, why not?
Awesome. What is the best way for people to get in touch with you if they really want to reach out?
Yeah, so definitely Twitter, Jenn Velez, JENNVELEZ. On Instagram, I think you can see it up there. I'm Hola Jenn, like hi Jen, hola in Spanish. Definitely, I have my email somewhere in there, a link to my email, link to my website. I'm at jennifervelez.com. Email is the best. I don't really take stuff via Instagram DM because it gets a little bit complicated, but email is the best way. But if you want to connect, if you want to keep up with my work and stuff, definitely via Instagram or Twitter.
And is that right? I think I put your Twitter as JENNVELEZ. Is that the correct Twitter? Okay, awesome. Great. Well, thank you so much, Jen. So I'm going to go ahead and share this on Instagram. I'll save it and I'll send you a copy of it. And then I will also put this on our website so you'll be featured on our front page.
Thank you so much for your kind words and for the opportunity. I've loved speaking with you and just letting people know about music journalism stuff. Thank you. Take care.
Yeah. Thank you. Have a good one.
You too.
Bye. Have a good day. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. That was Jenn Velez. You can find her at Hola Jen here on Instagram, and then you can find her again at Jenn Velez on Twitter. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions. We have an event tomorrow with the Gen Z exec for interview or for questions on branding, artist development, and she will be joining us, or Sierra Imani will be joining us. But feel free to watch the rest of this interview. If you missed anything, we'll have it saved to our platform, and we'll also put it up on our website. So we're very excited for you all to join and very happy that you joined us this morning. All right. Thanks, everybody. Bye.